love for beings, for other people especially, and compassion, the effort to remove their suffering in very real and very concrete ways. Okay, so we see as Buddhism comes to the West a kind of almost a antithesis or an antinomy of two ways in which one can look at the Dhamma. One is as a set of techniques, of methods, whether you call it a religion or not doesn't matter, but it's a path, a set of guidelines for developing inner peace, equanimity, perhaps some insight into one's own nature, into understanding of other people, in order to be able to live more harmoniously, more peacefully, with greater equanimity in the world. The other way to look at the Dharma is to see it as concerned with both inner development and outer transformation, with inner awakening and also elevating and awakening, arousing and awakening the world at least towards more sustainable, more worthy, more more wholesome guidelines to action that can infiltrate our social, economic, and political systems and transform them in ways that will promote the good of people in the world. And I think this question has become extremely critical for us today because we have now been reaching a point where I would say even the future of human survival on this planet is very much in question. I don't think we've ever been at such a point before in all of human history. And there are certain phenomena, certain currents of events which are contributing to this grave crisis that we're reaching almost imperceptibly, day by day, year by year. Okay, one of them, which is a kind of trend which has been going on perhaps since the beginning of human history, even days before that, and that is the persistence of war, conflict, and war. But what's especially dangerous about the present-day wars that are taking place, particularly those that involve the United States, is that they are conducted in more and more cold and impersonal ways. So now we have not only vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, but these nuclear weapons are spreading to more and more countries. And perhaps it's only a matter of time before some dangerous group of wild-minded terrorists get hold of the secrets for constructing a nuclear weapon and actually use it, which could well ignite a global nuclear conflagration. What strikes me as even more dangerous, well, maybe not more dangerous, but more pernicious at one level, is this use of drones as instruments of war. So that now the lords of battle don't have to go out into the battlefield to conduct their wars, but they can sit at desks in Nevada, Colorado, other states, after coming into work in the morning, driving out from their home at 8 o'clock in the morning, they sit down at their desk, press buttons which will survey different groups on the other side of the world, and when they see some suspicious people, they just press a button which will unleash a drone and kill them, just like playing a pinball machine or a computer game. And it's only a matter of time again before, in fact, already more and more countries are developing drone weaponry. So the United States has it, Israel has it, Great Britain has drones, and perhaps other countries will have drones in time. And what's especially tragic about their use is that generally for every high-value target that's eliminated, some 100 to 200 civilians will be killed. And so war becomes cold and personal, and it claims as its casualties people who have no involvement in war, people who are just going about their everyday life. And yet, in the United States, very, very few people even are aware of the existence of drone warfare. It's mentioned very occasionally in the news, and even the CIA, I think, has just grudgingly admitted that it employs drones as weapons of war. Okay, another great problem which is afflicting our society, particularly in the United States, but this is a problem which is spread out all over the world. We can see it in Europe now, and that is the widening gulf between the very small, wealthy, super wealthy, economic, financial elite, and just about everyone else who's excluded from that super high bracket. And to give you some idea of where the present situation is in the United States, I collected a few statistics, revealing statistics, again, that are hardly ever mentioned in presidential and vice presidential debates that we see on television. Okay, the share of wealth in the United States held by the bottom 80% of the people is 11%. The share of wealth held by the bottom 50% is 1.1%. The share of wealth held by the top 10% of the population is 75%. 3/4 of the wealth created in the United States belongs to just 10% of the population. But the share of wealth held by the top 1% is almost half of that, 35%. And if we were to slice it down to the 1/10 of 1%, again, it would be even more startling. So as one whittles down the population to a smaller and smaller percentage, one finds a strikingly higher proportion of the wealth in their possession. Okay, between 2009, the year 2009 and 2010, 93% of all new income created in the US went to the top 1% of the US population. If you're startled by that, I'll repeat it. 93% of all new wealth created went to 1% of the population. The other 7% went to the remaining 99%. So this is a situation as if somebody were to offer me a nice big, I like pumpkin pie. Suppose we have here 10 other monks, so somebody offers it to us as a dana. I'm given charge of cutting it up. Okay, I slice off maybe 1% of the pumpkin pie. I give it to the 10 monks here, and 99% of the pie I keep for myself. I like pumpkin pie. So I'm entitled to 99%. Okay, so this is the way wealth distribution is occurring. And for those of us in the 99%, we're told that the remedy is austerity. Of course, for monks, we know that tapoja, brahmachari, that austerity and the holy life, that is part of our ideal. But for people who are struggling to bring up a family with 2 children, 3 children, who are struggling to put enough food on the table, who have medical problems, austerity is not the answer. Okay, so as a result of this widening economic inequality, we have increasing poverty, hunger, homelessness, people not being treated for critical medical conditions, and this is occurring both nationally and globally. And then the third major problem that we find, which is really challenging the very survival of humanity as a human civilization, and that is something which has been almost invisible, very seldom mentioned in the mainstream news media, and that is climate change. I mean, it's mentioned occasionally, but I don't think the media are underlining the importance of these developments. But we've seen the results of them this past summer. Prolonged heat waves spreading out over the United States. In other states, Florida, other parts of like Pennsylvania, Ohio, terrible floods, more fierce, more intense hurricanes, heat waves, droughts, decimating whole crops of essential commodities like corn, soybeans, wheat. The stocks of these essential commodities are diminishing, and that means higher prices here in the United States. But since the United States also supplies a great part of the world with these commodities, it means that as the prices go up, these food staples become unaffordable for people around the world, which will lead to more social unrest, perhaps violent revolution, ethnic conflicts, and perhaps eventually the rise of more tyrannical demagogues will take control and start either regional or even global wars. Okay, so see, these are some of the problems that we are facing as a global community. And the big question that I feel that we have to deal with as Buddhists is whether Buddhism has some kind of answer, something to contribute to the discussion about the solution to these great problems. And I think these are problems which are taking place on a scale, such a scale that we can't find simple, ready answers to them within the Buddhist scriptures themselves. But what we can find are, I would say, a set of values, a set of guideposts that we can draw out from the ancient texts and ponder, deliberate, and consider as possible guideposts to the resolution of these problems that we face today. And I know that there's a certain conservative tendency within the Theravada tradition, but it seems that every religion has to evolve and develop in accordance with the age in which it finds itself. On the one hand, it has to hold fast to its principal, original teachings, the original insights, the original values, but the way it expresses these insights, the way it embodies these values, the way it articulates these principles, this has to develop so that it speaks meaningfully to people of that age. If one just continues to repeat the old formulas because they come down in the sutras and the texts, without applying them to the vital problems that are challenging us today, they can easily turn into a kind of dry, monotonous rhetoric. Something familiar that we hear over and over, but don't realize the potential of these principles for helping us out of our present crisis. And so I've been giving some thought to what are the kind